The Great Hall of Accord Prime was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Its walls were covered with the flags of 100 conquered species. And at its center, on a throne made of black crystal, sat High Arbiter Velen, ruler of the Galactic Concord. Dr. Buchanan stood before him. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had served as Earth's diplomatic voice for 20 years. She had learned patience. She had learned to smile when she wanted to scream. You understand the terms? Velen asked. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. I understand them, Hannah said. The terms were simple. Humanity would give up 3 of its colony worlds. The planets called New Busan, Hinam, and Gwangju would become Concord property. The millions of humans living there would be relocated. Their homes, their farms, their cities, all would belong to the Concord. In exchange, humanity would receive continued protection from the Concord fleet. Ambassador Torith, who stood beside Velen's throne, leaned forward. Your species has benefited greatly from Concord membership. 60 years of peace. Access to galactic trade routes. Protection from pirates and raiders. Surely 3 small worlds is a fair price. Hannah said nothing. The alternative, Velen continued, would be most unpleasant. The Concord does not tolerate disobedience. Ask the Talari what happens to species that refuse our guidance. Ask the Vethany. Still, Hannah said nothing. She simply bowed, turned, and walked out of the great hall. Behind her, Velen and Torith exchanged confused glances. They had expected tears. They had expected begging. They had expected negotiation. They had not expected silence. 12 hours later. Dr. Buchanan's shuttle docked at the orbital station above Earth. A young officer met her at the airlock. His name was Lieutenant Beekjun, and he happened to be her nephew. How did it go? He asked. Hannah handed him a data chip. Deliver this to Admiral Park. Tell him the answer is no. No negotiation. Hannah looked at her nephew with tired eyes. There was never going to be a negotiation. The Concord does not negotiate with species it considers inferior. They give orders. They expect obedience. She paused. It is time they learned that humanity does not obey. The war room of Earth's command was buried deep beneath the mountains of Gangwon Province. It had been built 300 years ago, during the last great war between nations. Now it served a different purpose. Admiral Park Taiho stood at the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays showing every human colony, every ship, every defense platform in human space. He was 63 years old. With a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen too much death, around him stood his senior staff. General Kong Seo commanded the ground forces, a tall man with broad shoulders and a scar running down his left cheek. Commander Choi Woojin ran the intelligence division, a quiet man who noticed everything and said little. And Captain Yoon Minji served as tactical officer, a young woman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. They had all read the Concord's demands. They had all reached the same conclusion. They want 3 worlds, Taiho said. Today, it is 3. Next year, it will be 5. In 10 years, they will want Earth itself. He looked at each of his officers in turn. I will not give them a single grain of soil. What about the diplomatic option? Woojin asked. It was not a real question. He already knew the answer. There is no diplomatic option, Taiho replied. The Concord has made that clear. They do not see us as equals. They see us as servants who have forgotten their place. He straightened his shoulders. It is time to remind them what humanity is capable of. General Kong Seok nodded slowly. The colonies are ready. I have been preparing for this day for 15 years. Every settlement has defensive positions. Every citizen knows what to do. The fleet is ready as well, Captain Yoon added. We have weapons the Concord has never seen. Technologies we have kept hidden for decades. They think they know our strength. They are wrong. Admiral Taiho turned to Commander Woojin. Begin the withdrawal. Every embassy, every merchant ship, every citizen in Concord space, bring them all home. Do it quietly. Do it quickly? And the Concord's demand? Woojin asked. They expect a response. It was not a pleasant smile. Send them silence. Let them wonder. Let them wait. Across the galaxy, the withdrawal began. Human embassies closed their doors without explanation. Human merchant vessels completed their final trades and set course for home. Human tourists cut their vacations short. Human workers resigned from their positions on Concord stations. It happened so smoothly, so quietly that most species did not notice at first. But Ambassador Torath noticed. He sent message after message to Earth, demanding an explanation. He received no reply. High Arbiter Velen grew impatient. He was not accustomed to being ignored. He summoned his advisors and demanded answers. Perhaps their communication systems have failed, one advisor suggested. Perhaps they are still deliberating, another offered. Perhaps, said chronicler Cephas, the ancient historian who recorded all Concord affairs, they have already made their decision. Velen dismissed the suggestion. Surely the humans were not foolish enough to defy the Concord. They had seen what happened to species that resisted. The Talari had lost half their population. The Vethani had been reduced to servants. The humans were clever enough to avoid such a fate. But as the days passed and the silence continued, a strange feeling began to grow in Velen's chest. It took him a while to recognize it, because he had not felt it in centuries. It was doubt. On Earth. Admiral Park Taiho addressed the United Parliament in a closed session. The representatives of every nation sat in the great chamber, waiting for his words. The Galactic Concord has demanded our submission, Taiho said. They want our worlds. They want our resources. They want our obedience. They believe we will give these things because we are afraid. He paused. They are wrong. The chamber was silent. I am not asking for war, Taiho continued. War has already been declared by them 60 years ago, when they accepted us into their Concord, not as partners but as future prey. Every demand, every insult, every condescending smile has been an act of war. We simply chose not to see it. He looked out at the assembled representatives. Now we see. And now we will respond. The vote was held in silence. Every hand rose. Humanity would not submit. Humanity would not negotiate. Humanity would fight, but they would issue no declaration. They would make no threats. They would simply act. In her small office aboard the orbital station, chronicler Cephas reviewed her notes on humanity. She had studied them for decades, trying to understand their strange species. They were soft. They were short-lived. They came from a small planet orbiting an unremarkable star, and yet, as she read report after report of human vessels returning home, human embassies going dark, and human citizens vanishing from Concord space, she felt a chill run down her spine. She made a note in her chronicle. The humans are not fleeing. They are not hiding. They are preparing. And the Concord, in its arrogance, does not see the storm that is coming. She was right. The storm was coming, and it would shake the galaxy to its foundations. 3 weeks passed. The silence from Earth continued. High Arbiter Velen sat in his throne room, surrounded by advisors who had no advice to give. Ambassador Torath had sent 47 messages to Earth. Not one had received a reply. It was unprecedented. It was insulting, and it was beginning to make Velen nervous. They are testing us, War Marshal Dren said. He was a massive creature, 7 feet tall, with scales like black iron. He had commanded the Concord military for 200 years. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. He did not understand fear. Send me to their system. I will remind them of their place. Not yet, Velen said. First, we will give them one more chance. Torith, you will go to Earth yourself. Deliver the ultimatum in person. Make certain they understand the consequences of refusal. Torith bowed. As you command. His ship arrived in the Sol system 5 days later. What he found there made his heart stop. Earth had always maintained a modest defense force. 100 ships, perhaps. A few orbital platforms, nothing that could threaten the Concord. But now, as Tarath's shuttle approached the planet, he counted over 300 warships arranged in perfect formation. The orbital platforms had multiplied like insects. Weapon systems that he did not recognize pointed at his shuttle from every direction. Human fighters escorted him to a docking station far from Earth itself. He was not permitted to approach the planet. He was not permitted to see the cities. He was treated like a potential enemy rather than a diplomatic guest. Commander Choi Woojian met him at the airlock. Woojin was a small man, with glasses and a calm face. He looked more like a teacher than a military officer. But his eyes were cold, Ambassador Woojin said. You have come a long way. I bring a message from High Arbiter Velen, Torith replied. He tried to sound confident. He tried to sound powerful. But his voice shook slightly. Humanity has 10 cycles to comply with the Concord's demands. If you refuse, the Concord will take corrective action. Woojin listened. His expression did not change. When Torith finished speaking, Woojin simply nodded. Is that all? Woojin asked. Do you have a response? No, Torith waited. Surely there would be something. A counteroffer. A request for more time. Something, but Woojin said nothing more. He simply gestured toward the airlock. The meeting was over. Torith returned to his ship in a daze. As his shuttle departed the Sol system, he looked back at the fortress that Earth had become. He had come to deliver a threat. Instead, he felt like he had been the one threatened. His report to High Arbiter Velen was brief. They said nothing. They simply stared at me with those strange human eyes. I do not think they are afraid. I think they are waiting. Velen's patience finally broke. War Marshal Dren, he commanded. Assemble a battle group. Go to one of their outer colonies. Show them what the Concord can do. Do not destroy the colonies, simply demonstrate our power. Make them understand. His teeth were like daggers. With pleasure. The Concord battle group consisted of 47 warships. Each one was larger than anything in the human fleet. Each one carried weapons that could burn cities to ash. Dren commanded them from his flagship, the Unstoppable Might. And he felt invincible. The target was New Busan, a human colony on the edge of known space. It was a small world with 3 million inhabitants. Farmers mostly, miners, families who had left Earth seeking a simpler life. Dren expected them to surrender the moment they saw his fleet. Governor Esionari received the transmission from the approaching Concord ships. She was a woman of 50, with iron-gray hair and a stubborn jaw. She had been born on New Busan. She had raised her children there, and she had no intention of letting anyone take it from her. They want us to surrender, her aide said nervously. I heard them, Nari replied. She sat at her desk, calm as stone. Contact the defense force. Tell Captain Yoon the guests have arrived. In the asteroid belt surrounding New Busan, hidden among rocks and shadows, Captain Yoon Minji received the message. She smiled. It was the smile of a hunter who had finally caught her prey. All ships, she said quietly. Prepare for engagement. Remember your training. Remember your families. And remember that today, we show the galaxy who we really are. The Concord fleet entered orbit around New Busan. War Marshal Dren activated the communication system to broadcast his demands. Before he could speak, a single message reached his ship. It was from Governor Sionari. You should not have come here, Dren laughed. The arrogance of these humans. Did they not see the 47 warships above their tiny world? Did they not understand their helplessness? Then the asteroids began to move. They were not asteroids at all. They were human warships, disguised with rock and dust, waiting in perfect silence for weeks. 40 ships emerged from hiding. Then 60. Then 80. Impossible, Dren whispered. The human weapons fired. Dren had studied human technology. He knew their missiles, their lasers, their kinetic weapons. He was prepared for all of them. He was not prepared for what came next. The first wave of missiles simply vanished as they approached his ships. Then they reappeared inside his shields, inside his hull, detonating in the heart of his vessels. Phase weapons. The humans had developed phase weapons that could ignore shields entirely. His ships returned fire, but their targeting systems went mad. Computers crashed. Navigation failed. Communication channels filled with screaming static. The human electronic warfare systems were decades beyond anything the Concorde had seen. Then came the railgun rounds. Each one was a simple piece of metal, accelerated to a fraction of light speed. They punched through Concorde armor like paper. Ships that had survived 1,000 battles broke apart in seconds. War Marshal Dren watched his fleet die. He tried to rally his ships, but they could not hear him. He tried to retreat, but his engines had failed. He tried to fight, but his weapons would not fire in 12 minutes. It was over. Of the 47 Concorde warships, 42 were destroyed. The remaining 5, including Dren's flagship, drifted helplessly in space. Their systems fried by human electronic attacks. Captain Yoon. Minji's voice came through Dren's speakers. War Marshal, your fleet has been neutralized. You may surrender now, or you may die. The choice is yours. Dren had never surrendered in his life. He was War Marshal of the Galactic Concorde. He was undefeated. He was unstoppable. He looked at the wreckage of his fleet floating past his window. He looked at the human ships surrounding him, their weapons pointed at his heart. He thought of his crew who were still alive, who still had families waiting for them. I surrender, he said. The words tasted like poison on New Busan. Governor Sionari watched the battle end from her office window. Her aide stood beside her, trembling with shock and relief. We won, the aide whispered. We actually won. This was not victory, Nari said quietly. This was the first shot. The war has just begun. She was right. When the news reached Accord Prime, chronicler Cephas wrote in her chronicle with trembling hands. She had recorded 1,000 years of Concorde history. She had documented wars, rebellions, and conquests. But she had never recorded anything like this. A minor species. A young species. A species that the Concorde had dismissed as weak and primitive. They had destroyed the Concorde's fleet in 12 minutes without losing a single ship. Concorde sent a threat, Cephas wrote. Humanity sent a lesson. And I fear this lesson is only the beginning. High Arbiter Velen read the battle report in silence. His hands did not shake. His face did not change. But inside, something cold and terrible was growing. For the first time in 300 years, the Concorde had been challenged. For the first time in his long life, Velen wondered if they could actually lose. 1 month after the Battle of New Busan, the galaxy was different. The news had spread like fire. A minor species had crushed a Concorde battle group. War Marshal Dren, the undefeated, had surrendered. The mighty Concorde had been humiliated by creatures they considered barely more than animals. On 100 worlds, oppressed species whispered the news to each other. The Telleri spoke of it in their underground cities. The Vethani discussed it in their labor camps. The Dranathi warriors debated it in their training halls. For centuries, resistance had seemed impossible. Now, for the first time, it seemed possible. High Arbiter Velen convened an emergency council. The leaders of every Concorde species gathered in the Great Hall. Some demanded immediate revenge. Others urged caution. Fear and anger filled the air like smoke. We must destroy them, one leader shouted. Burn their worlds. Make an example of them. We must be careful, another argued. We do not understand their weapons. We do not know their true strength. Velen listened to them argue. He felt old. He felt tired. He had ruled the Concord for 300 years. He had crushed rebellions. He had conquered species. He had built an empire that spanned the galaxy. And now, a species he had never taken seriously was threatening everything. "Assemble the Grand Fleet," he finally said. His voice was quiet but firm. "Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We will end this war with overwhelming force." War Marshal Dren, still a prisoner on New Busan, was replaced by a new commander. The Grand Fleet began to gather. But Admiral Park Taeho did not wait. "We cannot fight them in a direct battle," Taeho explained to his staff. "The Grand Fleet will outnumber us 4-1. If we wait for them to come to us, we will lose." He pointed at the holographic map of Concord space. "So we will not wait. We will attack." General Kong Seok leaned forward. "Attack where?" "We do not have the ships to assault their core worlds." "Do not need to assault their worlds," Taeho replied. "We need to destroy their ability to fight. Supply depots, communication relays, shipyards, fuel stations. We will cut their supply lines. We will blind their communications. We will make sure that when their Grand Fleet finally arrives, it will be hungry, confused, and alone."
Oh.
The plan was bold. It was dangerous. It was exactly what humanity needed. Human strike forces launched across Concord space. They did not come in great armadas. They came in small groups, 5 ships here, 10 ships there. They struck fast and vanished before reinforcements could arrive, Commander Choi. Woojin coordinated the attacks from Earth. His intelligence network had spent decades mapping Concord vulnerabilities. Now that knowledge was being used, a supply depot on the edge of Talari space was destroyed in the night. A communication relay near the Vethany homeworld went dark. A shipyard that had built Concord warships for centuries was reduced to rubble. And everywhere the humans went, it left messages. "The Concord cannot protect you," the messages said. "They cannot even protect themselves. You are not alone anymore." The oppressed species listened, and some of them began to act. On Teller Prime, workers refused to load supplies onto Concord ships. When the Concord guards tried to force them, they found that someone had sabotaged their weapons. The guards fled. On Vethany Minor, conscripted soldiers deserted their posts. They had been forced to serve in the Concord military for generations. Now they saw a chance for freedom, and they took it. On Dranathi Station, warriors who had served the Concord faithfully began to question their loyalty. They were a proud species. They had been soldiers for the Concord for centuries. But they had always known, deep down, that they were servants, not partners. The humans had shown them that servants did not have to serve forever. General Kong Seoki led the most daring mission personally. A Concord military academy trained officers on a moon called Keth Thusa. Eddies of young soldiers learned war there. The Concord expected Kang to destroy it, to kill the future leaders of their military. Instead, Kang and his soldiers landed in the middle of the night. They disabled the defense systems without firing a shot. They captured the instructors without killing anyone. And when the students woke up, they found human soldiers standing guard not as enemies, but as teachers. "We are not here to kill you," Kang told the assembled students. His voice was calm but strong. "We are here to show you something. Your leaders told you that resistance was impossible. They lied. Your leaders told you that the Concord was invincible. They lied. Look around you. We are here. We are winning. And we did not have to slaughter children to do it. We left the academy intact. The students were free to return to their homes. Many of them did. And many of them carried Kong's words with them like seeds that would bloom into something new." Dr. Buchanan, once a diplomat, now served as a psychological warfare advisor. She understood something that many military leaders did not. Wars are not won only with weapons. They are won with ideas. She created broadcasts that spread across Concord space. They told stories of human history, stories of oppression and rebellion, of empires that seemed invincible until they fell, of ordinary people who stood up against impossible odds and won. "The Concord tells you that you are weak," the broadcast said. "But weakness is not about strength. Weakness is about surrender. The Concord is strong because you believe they are strong. Stop believing and their strength disappears. Chronicler Cephas listened to these broadcasts from her chamber on Accord Prime. She was old, even by the standards of her long-lived species. She had seen the Concord rise. Now, she was beginning to think she might see it fall. She interviewed a captured human soldier, a young private named Beak June. He was Dr. Buchanan's nephew, though he did not mention this. He sat in his cell with remarkable calm, showing no fear of his captors. "Why do you fight so hard?" Cephas asked him. "You are a young species. You are few in number. You cannot possibly win against the entire galaxy." Beak June smiled. It was a gentle smile, almost sad. "You ask why we fight. The answer is simple. We fight because no one else would." Cephas did not understand. "What do you mean?" The Talari did not fight. The Vethani did not fight. The Dranathi did not fight. Species after species surrendered to the Concord because fighting seemed impossible. And each surrender made the Concord stronger. Looked at Cephas with clear eyes. Someone had to be first. Someone had to show the galaxy that resistance was possible. We did not choose this war because we thought we could win. We chose it because someone had to. Cephas wrote his words in her chronicle. She thought about them for a long time. On Accord Prime, High Arbiter Velen received disturbing news. Human agents had been detected on the station itself. His own security forces had been infiltrated. The humans were not just fighting a war, they were dismantling the Concord from the inside. He ordered a security lockdown. Guards searched every corridor. Sensors scanned every shadow, but the humans were ghosts. They slipped through fingers like water. Velen stood alone in his throne room that night. The great hall felt smaller than before. The flags of conquered species seemed to mock him from the walls. For the first time in 300 years, he asked himself a question he had never considered before. Could the Concord actually lose this war? He did not know the answer, and that uncertainty terrified him more than any human weapon ever could, far away. In the war room beneath the mountains of Gangwon Province, Admiral Park Tae-ho reviewed the latest reports. The attacks were working. The Concord's supply lines were in chaos. Their communication network was full of holes. Their subject species were restless, but the Grand Fleet was still coming. 2,000 warships gathering like a storm. "We have hurt them," Captain Yoon, Minji said. "But we have not stopped them." "No," Tae-ho agreed. "The final battle is still coming, and when it comes, we must be ready." He looked at the star map showing human space 14 systems, 14 billion people, everything humanity had ever built. "We will be ready," he said quietly. "We have to be." 3 months into the war, Grand Fleet was finally ready. 2,047 warships gathered at the edge of Concord space. They came from every corner of the galaxy. Concord vessels, ships from loyal subject species, mercenary fleets hired with promises of human plunder. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The new War Marshal, a creature named Veth, stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Eternal Dominion. He was not like Dren. He did not underestimate humans. He had studied every battle, every tactic, every weapon they had used. He believed he understood them. He was wrong. High Arbiter Velen addressed the fleet before it departed. His holographic image appeared on every ship, on every screen. "You carry the pride of the Concord," he said. "For 300 years we have ruled this galaxy. We have brought order to chaos. We have brought peace to violence. And now, a young species dares to challenge us. They have won battles through trickery and deception. But trickery cannot defeat 2,000 ships. Deception cannot stop the combined might of the galaxy." He raised his hand. "Go now. End this rebellion. Restore the order that has kept the galaxy safe for 3 centuries." The Grand Fleet departed. It would take 2 weeks to reach human space dawn on Earth. Admiral Park Tae-ho received the intelligence report from Commander Choi Woo-jin. 2,000 ships. The largest fleet ever assembled. Coming directly for the Sol system, his staff stared at the numbers in horror. "We have 600 ships," Captain Yoon Mingi said quietly. Even with our technology, those odds are impossible. If we fight at Earth, yes, Taiho replied. His voice was calm. It's calm. So we will not fight at Earth. General Kong Seok frowned. You want to leave Earth undefended? I want to choose where we fight. Taiho pulled up a star map. He pointed to a region of empty space between systems. The void of Kalin. No planets. No stations. Just empty space and stars. If we meet them there, they cannot use their numbers to surround us. They will have to come through a single approach corridor. It will still be outnumbered, Yoon said. Yes, but we will have other advantages. Taiho looked at his officers. The Concorde fleet is made of many species. They do not trust each other. They do not fight well together. Half of them are conscripts who would rather be anywhere else. We are one species. We fight for our homes, our families, our survival. And we have something they do not. What? Woojin asked. Desperation, Taiho answered. A desperate enemy is the most dangerous enemy. The Concorde thinks this war is about pride. For them, losing means embarrassment. For us, losing means extinction. That desperation will make us stronger than any weapon. The human fleet departed Earth 3 days later. 612 warships, carrying the hope of 14 billion people. Captain Yoon Minji commanded the vanguard. General Kong Seok commanded the marine boarding forces. Commander Woojin coordinated the electronic warfare systems. And Admiral Taiho commanded everything. Watching the battle unfold from the bridge of the flagship, Defiance, they reached the void of Kalin 2 days before the Grand Fleet arrived, and they waited. War Marshal Veth was suspicious when his scouts reported the human fleet waiting in open space. It seemed too convenient. It seemed like a trap, but he had 2,000 ships. Even if it was a trap, what could 600 human vessels do against his armada? He ordered the attack. The battle began at sunrise, that there was a sun in the void. But the humans had synchronized their clocks to Korean time, and it was morning in Seoul. The Concorde fleet advanced in a massive wave. Veth expected the humans to retreat or scatter. Instead, they charged directly into the center of his formation. It was madness. It was suicide. It was exactly what Taiho had planned. The human ships punched through the Concorde formation like a knife through paper. They used their phase weapons to ignore shields, their electronic warfare to blind sensors, their railguns to shatter holes. But more importantly, they created chaos. The Concorde fleet was designed to fight as a single unit. When the humans appeared in their midst, different ships began firing in different directions. Friendly fire incidents multiplied. Communication channels overflowed with confused orders and panicked screaming. General Kong Seok launched his Marines. Thousands of human soldiers in armored suits flew through space. Landing on Concorde warships and cutting their way inside, they were trained for this. They had practiced for years, and they were terrifying. Kong himself led the assault on the Eternal Dominion VS's command ship. His Marines breached the hull in 7 places simultaneously. They fought through corridors filled with Concorde soldiers, never retreating, never slowing down. Kong found Veth on the bridge, surrounded by his personal guards. The battle lasted 30 seconds. When it was over, Kong stood over the unconscious war marshal with a boot on his chest. Ship secured, he reported through his communicator. Enemy commander captured. Throughout the void, the same story repeated itself. Human Marines captured command ships, disabled weapons systems, and took officers prisoner. The Grand Fleet began to fall apart. But the Concorde still had numbers. Even in chaos, even with their leadership captured, they could still win through sheer weight of fire. Hundreds of human ships were damaged. Dozens were destroyed. The void filled with wreckage and bodies. Captain Yoon Minji fought at the heart of the battle. Her ship, the Righteous Fury, was hit 17 times. Her crew was cut in half. But she kept fighting, kept commanding, kept pushing forward. We are losing ships, she reported to Taiho. We cannot sustain these losses. Just a little longer, Taiho replied. Trust me, he was waiting for something. Yoon did not know what. Then she saw it. Dr. Buchanan's broadcasts had been playing throughout the battle, transmitted on frequencies that every Concorde ship could receive. They spoke of freedom. They spoke of choice. They spoke of a galaxy where no species had to serve another. And now, those broadcasts were having an effect. A Teleri cruiser lowered its weapons and withdrew from the battle. Then another. Then a dozen. A Vethany destroyer transmitted a message. We will not fight for our enslavers any longer. A Dranathi warship turned its guns on the Concorde vessel beside it and opened fire. Across the Grand Fleet, conscripted soldiers from oppressed species were making a choice. They could die for the Concorde that had enslaved them, or they could refuse. Thousands chose to refuse. The Grand Fleet shattered. Ships scattered in every direction. Some fled back toward Concorde space. Some surrendered to human forces. Some simply drifted, their crews too confused or frightened to do anything. Admiral Taiho watched the enemy fleet dissolve into chaos. He felt no joy, only exhaustion and grief. Pursue the remnants, he ordered quietly. Accept all surrenders. Show mercy to those who ask for it. And collect our dead. Every single one. The Battle of Kalon was over. Of the 2,000 Concorde ships, fewer than 400 escaped intact. The rest were destroyed, captured, or abandoned. The human fleet had lost 119 ships, 43,000 soldiers, 43,000 sons and daughters who would never come home. On Accord Prime, High Arbiter Velen received the news in his throne room. He sat in silence for a long time. The great hall felt empty now. The flags of conquered species seemed to laugh at him from the walls. The Concorde was not invincible. The Concorde could be defeated. The Concorde was dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light. The Grand Fleet was destroyed. The humans had won. And suddenly, every species that had ever dreamed of freedom began to believe that maybe, just maybe, their dreams could come true. In his cell on New Busan, the original War Marshal Dren heard the news from his guards. He asked to speak with Admiral Taiho. The request was granted. Taiho came to his cell 3 days later. He looked tired. His uniform was wrinkled. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. You destroyed our fleet, Dren said. You captured our commanders. You have one? He studied Taiho's face. Why did you never try to negotiate? Taiho was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with exhaustion and sorrow. Because you never intended to listen, he said. The Concorde did not want peace. The Concorde wanted submission. And submission was never something we were willing to give. He turned and walked away, leaving Dren alone with his thoughts. The war was almost over, but the hardest part was still to come. 6 months after the war began, High Arbiter Velen came to Earth. He did not come with a fleet. He did not come with demands or threats or ultimatums. He came alone in a small shuttle, nothing but the clothes on his back and the weight of 3 centuries on his shoulders. The shuttle landed in Seoul. In a garden overlooking the Han River, it was spring, and the cherry blossoms were falling like pink snow. Admiral Park Tae-ho waited there, sitting on a wooden bench beneath an ancient tree. Velen approached slowly. He was old now. The stress of the war had aged him terribly. His scales, once bright blue, had faded to gray. His eyes, once sharp and proud, were tired and sad. He stopped in front of Taiho for a long moment. Neither of them spoke. Then Velen bowed. It was not a small bow. It was not a diplomatic gesture. It was a full bow, deep and humble, the kind that his species only gave to those they considered truly superior. I have come to surrender, Velen said. His voice was barely a whisper. The Concorde is finished. Our fleets are gone. Our subject species have abandoned us. We have nothing left. Taiho gestured to the bench beside him. Sit. Velen hesitated. Then he sat. They looked out together at the river, at the falling blossoms. At the city rising in the distance, Dr. Buchanan arrived a few minutes later. She carried a tray with a teapot and 2 cups. She poured tea for both of them, then stepped back and waited. Velen stared at the cup. Such a simple thing. Such a human thing. He had ruled a galaxy, and now he was drinking tea in a garden with the man who had destroyed everything he built. "What do you want?" Velen finally asked. "Territory? Tribute? Revenge?" Taiho took a sip of his tea. He was silent for a long time. "Nothing," he said at last. Velen looked at him in disbelief. "Nothing? We did not fight this war for conquest," Taiho explained. "We did not fight for wealth, or power, or glory. We fought because we had no choice. You demanded our worlds. You demanded our submission. We refused." He set down his cup and looked at Velen directly. "We do not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want tribute from other species. We do not want revenge for the lives we lost, though we lost many." His voice became heavy with grief. "We want only one thing, to be left alone, and for no species to ever be forced to submit again. That is all? That is everything." Velen was silent for a long time. He had expected demands. He had expected humiliation. He had expected to trade away what remained of the Concord's dignity for survival. He had not expected mercy. "The Concorde is gone," Velen said finally. "What will replace it?" Taiho reached into his jacket and pulled out a document. It was written on actual paper, not a holographic display. It was covered with signatures from 100 different species. "Federation," Taiho said. "Not like the Concorde. No species above another. No forced membership. No tribute, no conscription, no conquest. Every species joins by choice. Every species has an equal voice. Every species keeps their own worlds, their own culture, their own freedom." Velen read the document slowly. It was called the Charter of the Free Federation. Its first article stated, "All intelligent species are born free and equal in dignity and rights." "You wrote this?" Velen said. It was not a question. "We helped," Taiho replied. "But the Talari wrote the section on economic rights. The Vethani wrote the section on cultural preservation. The Dranathi wrote the section on military cooperation. This is not a human document. It belongs to everyone." Velen set down the charter. His hands were trembling. "I ruled the galaxy for 300 years, he said quietly. "I thought I was bringing order. I thought I was bringing peace. I told myself that conquest was necessary, that some species were simply meant to serve others." He looked at Taiho with wet eyes. "I was wrong." Taiho did not respond. There was nothing to say. The past could not be changed. Only the future could be built. 1 week later, the Charter of the Free Federation was signed in a ceremony on Earth. Representatives from over 60 species gathered in the United Parliament building in Seoul. Some came willingly. Some came cautiously. Some came simply because they had nowhere else to go. Admiral Park Taiho did not speak at the ceremony. He stood at the back of the room, watching as species that had fought each other for centuries shook hands and made promises of peace. Beside him stood his officers. General Kang Seok, who had led Marines through the corridors of enemy ships. Commander Choi Woojin, who had coordinated the intelligence that made victory possible. Captain Yoon Minji, who had held the line at Kalen when everything seemed lost. Dr. B. Kanna, who had turned words into weapons as powerful as any missile. None of them smiled. They had lost too many friends. They had seen too much death. Victory did not feel like victory. It felt like survival, but it was enough. Chronicler Cephas stood at the signing table, recording everything. She had watched the Concorde rise. She had watched it fall. Now, she was watching something new being born. After the ceremony, she approached Velen. The former High Arbiter stood alone by a window, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and red. "How will history remember this war?" she asked him. Velen considered the question for a long time. "I used to think history would remember humanity as villains," he said. "They destroyed our fleet. They collapsed our empire. They ended 300 years of order." Paused. "But now I understand. Humanity did not refuse diplomacy. They refused submission. And the Concordite failed to understand the difference until it was too late." Cephas wrote his words in her chronicle. She added her own observation beneath them. The galaxy changed today. Not because humans were strong, but because they reminded us what strength truly means. It means standing for something worth standing for. It means refusing to bow, even when the alternative is annihilation. It means believing that some things are more important than survival. 1 year later, Admiral Park Tae-ho retired. He bought a small house on Jeju Island, on a cliff overlooking the sea. He planted a garden. He raised chickens. He watched the waves crash against the rocks below, and tried to forget the sound of ships exploding in the void. He did not forget. He would never forget. But slowly, day by day, the memories became bearable. Dr. Buchanan visited him one evening in autumn. The leaves were changing color, and the air smelled of salt and smoke. She brought a bottle of wine and sat with him on his porch as the sun set. They talked about small things: the garden, the weather, the news from Earth. They did not talk about the war. They did not need to. Finally, as the stars began to appear overhead, Hannah asked the question she had carried with her for months. Do you think it will last? The peace. Tae-ho considered the question. He thought about all the wars in human history. He thought about all the empires that had risen and fallen. He thought about the Federation, still young and fragile, trying to unite species that had been enemies for centuries. It will last, he said at last, as long as people are willing to fight for it. Hannah nodded slowly. She understood peace was not something that was given. It was something that was earned. It had to be defended every day, not with weapons, but with wisdom, with courage, with the refusal to let fear and hatred win. Humanity had learned that lesson the hard way. They had been willing to fight. They had been willing to die. They had been willing to stand alone against an entire galaxy, and because of that, they were no longer alone. The stars emerged overhead, countless and bright. Somewhere out there, the Federation was growing. Species that had been slaves were building new futures. Species that had been conquerors were learning new ways. And humanity, the young species that had refused to bow, was watching over it all. Not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as guardians, as friends, as the ones who had reminded the galaxy what it truly meant to be free. Tae-ho looked up at the stars. He thought of all the soldiers he had lost, all the friends who had died so that humanity could survive. He raised his glass to them in silent tribute. Then he turned to Hannah and smiled, a real smile, the first one in a very long time. Come on, he said. The wine is getting warm. They went inside together, leaving the stars to keep their ancient watch, and across the galaxy, a new age was beginning.